Hey, what is up guys? So this video is going to be dedicated to not just vegans, but also non-vegans and anybody who thinks that it's morally problematic to kill and eat dogs and cats. I just find it very weird that people think that it's not okay to take dogs and cats and kill them against their will for food. So I wanted to, make a video going over some of the amazing reasoning that I think justifies the killing and eating of cats and dogs. Now, to be clear, there is a lot of good reasoning as to why we should be able to do these things. So because of that, I'm going to be just covering a good amount of the arguments for this, because if I were to cover all of them, we would be here for an extremely long time. So reason number one is that the animal is already dead. If you go to a store and you see, dog and cat meat, the animal's already dead. So why would you not eat the animal? They're dead already, they're not really being harmed in the process of you buying the product. So that's a good reason to eat dogs and cats. Eating meat in general is a very natural thing. And if you look at my canines and your canines, you'll see that you have teeth that are designed to rip through flesh. So because it's natural for humans to eat meat, it's therefore moral to kill and eat cats and dogs for meat. If something is natural, it is therefore good. There's also people that are at risk of eating disorders if they try to not consume cats and dogs. Technically, not eating cats and dogs is a form of dietary restriction. And we don't want people who are prone to binge eating disorders to, have an episode of binge eating or have an episode of some kind of an eating disorder. Therefore, we should allow people to eat whatever they want, and that includes cats and dogs. There is also no ethical consumption under capitalism, and because of that, we should be justified in paying for as much suffering and death as possible, and that includes the suffering and death of cats and dogs. There is a whole industry that is dedicated to food in the form of cats and dogs. If we were to eradicate cat and dog consumption, so many people would be out of work. If those people are out of work, they won't have any money and they will suffer and possibly die. So it should be morally justified to pay for cats and dogs to suffer and die. People already eat things like plants, and plants feel pain. So even to the vegans that object to eating dogs and cats, they're still eating plants which feel pain. So one way or another, if you eat dogs and cats or you eat plants, you're causing suffering and death. Therefore, it is moral to cause suffering and death towards cats and dogs and eat them. These cats and dogs that are bred to be consumed would not otherwise exist if we didn't breed them to be consumed. So we're actually, in a way, giving them a life. Therefore, it is justified to murder them after we give them their life. If you want to give someone life by bringing them to life, whether it's a kid or a cat or a dog, you are justified in murdering them for food whenever you want. In those areas in the world, most people also eat dogs and cats. So if other people do it, it must be moral. If everyone is doing something, or if the majority of a given population is doing something, it is clearly moral. And in those areas, it's also legal. So if it's legal to do something, and most people do it, it is moral. Just like slavery. Back in the day, when slavery was practiced by most people, and it was legal, it was therefore moral. Another really good reason why you should start eating cats and dogs today is because we're never gonna really be in a world where people don't eat cats and dogs. It's always going to exist, and therefore we should make no effort to stop it. Killing and eating animals is part of the food chain. So if you have a moral problem with me killing and eating dogs and cats, just what about the food chain? The food chain exists. Therefore, I should have the right to just go and murder whoever I want for food. There's also invasive species of animals in other environments that may harm specific areas. Therefore, I should be justified in killing and eating cats and dogs that aren't actually invasive to anybody. groups of people who are against dog and cat consumption and, are activists towards this, they're in a cult. Like, if you're against animal abuse toward cats and dogs, you're in a cult, and I don't want to be in that cult, and you shouldn't want to be in it either. Therefore, eating cats and dogs is moral. There's also people in the world who are in a situation where their only food option is cats and dogs, and therefore you, who is not in a situation where your only food option is cats and dogs, should be completely justified in paying for cats and dogs to be exploited and murdered. If certain animals had the chance, they would eat me. So why would I afford the right to cats and dogs for them to not be subject to exploitation and killing? Like, if a lion saw me walking down the street, they would attack me. Therefore, I should be moral in killing and eating whatever animal I want, and that includes dogs and cats. Eating animals is a personal choice too. Like, if I want to eat cats and dogs, you should allow me to do that. Who cares if my personal choice actually causes the suffering and death of cats and dogs? It's my personal choice. If something is a choice, it is justified. So whatever you do in life, as long as it's a choice, it doesn't matter if it harms anybody, it is therefore justified. Animals were also put here for us. So if they're put here for us, we can do whatever we want with them. And the Bible also says that we have dominion over the animals. And if we have dominion over the animals, according to a 1,000-year-old book that's been translated over and over and over, then therefore we should have the right to murder cats and dogs for food without question. So there's certain areas in the world where cats and dogs are being eaten, and there's plenty of activists that fight against this, but there's so many bigger issues in the world than fighting against dog and cat consumption. So like, why would you even bother trying to stop it? Cats and dogs also don't share a social contract with me. So if a dog and a cat lack the mental capacity to share a social contract with me, I should be justified in murdering them. Just like if there's certain mentally disabled humans that don't have the actual mental capacity to uphold a social contract, those people also, just like cats and dogs, should not have the right to avoid being exploited and killed for their flesh. I also just don't really care about cats and dogs. Like, I don't care. So I should be, justified in killing them for food, right? We also have dominion over the animals. Like, we have the right to do whatever we want to them, and therefore I should have the right to murder cats and dogs for food. Humans have been killing and eating dogs and cats for thousands of years, and if it was so wrong to do these things, we would have stopped by now, but there's still cultures today that continue to do it, so obviously it's morally right. If we've been doing something for a long period of time, it is definitely morally correct. Cat and dog meat also just tastes so good, and the pleasure that you will derive from cat and dog meat surely outweighs the actual life of the cat and dog that are going to be murdered and exploited for your taste pleasure. Morality is subjective, so people have their own sense of what is right and wrong, and therefore you can't tell them what they should and shouldn't do. So if I want to, pay for dogs to be tortured for food, or pay for cats to be tortured for food, I have that right because morality is subjective though. There's some cat and dog mock meat products that are made of plants that are meant to taste like cats and dogs that are very expensive. So because those foods are expensive, you can't expect everybody to be able to afford mock cat and dog products. In other words, not eating cats and dogs is expensive. So because it's expensive, I should have the right to murder cats and dogs for food. Lions actually consume meat, and if a lion saw a dog, I'm sure they would attack and kill the dog. If a lion saw a baby cat, I'm sure they would also do that. So because a lion would end up going and killing and eating a dog and a cat, we should be justified in also doing it because lions are excellent examples of morality. So there are cases where cats and dogs can actually have B12 in them. And if you don't eat cats and dogs, you may need to supplement And I mean, supplementation is just weird. Like, I want my diet to be filled with only food. So because I don't like supplements that actually end up working anyway, I should be morally justified in murdering cats and dogs so I can eat them for B12. Eating meat also made our brains bigger evolutionarily. So because eating meat in the past was necessary for us to grow our big brains, right now it's okay for me to murder and kill cats and dogs so I can eat them. Humans are also intellectually superior to cats and dogs. So we have the right. I mean, kind of like might makes right. Like if you have the might to do something and you are superior to another being, you should have the right to just do whatever you want to that other being, even if it's killing and eating them for food. Also, cats and dogs just aren't humans, and I only value humans. And therefore, because I only value humans, it should be moral for me to just cause the endless suffering of cats and dogs. People who are against the consumption of cats and dogs view humans and cats and dogs to be morally equivalent or equal. And I don't do this. I think that humans are, of more value than cats and dogs. It's not like there's a way for you to view humans, cats, and dogs and say, hey, humans are worth more than cats and dogs, but I'm still gonna say that it's wrong to stab these cats and dogs in the throat for food. No way at all. That's not logically possible. It just doesn't make any sense. Also, plant agriculture results in the deaths of animals as well. And just basically any form of industry results in some amount of deaths. So why would I stop at cats and dogs? Like, because death is just inevitable and we don't live in a fully vegan world where we've tried to maximize the amount of avoidance of killing of cats and dogs and other animals for food, clothing, experimentation, etc. Because we don't live in that world yet, I should be justified in directly paying for the breeding, exploitation, and consumption and murder of cats and dogs. I might as well maximize the amount of suffering I am causing on this planet because it is nearly impossible to live in a way that requires zero suffering. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video and now understand why the consumption of cats and dogs and the murder of cats and dogs for human benefit is completely moral. I definitely made a lot of sense in this video. Please share it around, especially to your cat and dog lovers who oppose, cat and dog murder, just so they can understand the myriad of good reasons for why we should be allowed to murder cats and dogs for human benefit. Okay guys, jokes aside, obviously all I did in this video was take all the dumb reasons that people say that we shouldn't be vegan or that veganism is wrong and applied it to the consumption of cats and dogs. If you disagree with this video and the premise and what I'm clearly getting at in this video, please let me know in the comments below why it doesn't make any sense to apply the same arguments that people make towards the consumption of cows, pigs, and chickens to the consumption of dogs and cats. Why exactly do any of these stupid reasons as to why we should be allowed to murder cows, pigs, and chickens not work in the context of killing and eating cats and dogs? Please let me know below. Alright guys, that is the end of the video. If you support my work and want to support me on Patreon, the link is in my description. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Dude, even vegans don't get your weird, stupid wannabe sense of irony here. Who is your audience? Nobody gets these dumb jokes. Dude, even vegans don't get your weird, stupid